Welcome to a fast episode on the American Revolution as it relates to U.S. history STAAR test. STAAR test is not particularly concerned with the battles of the Revolution. It's more concerned with the ideas as to why we revolted, why we overthrew the British government, and why, in the Declaration, what it is that we're saying when we decide to become an independent country and how we are going to build that country. But all that said, it's important that we cover some of what occurred in that American Revolution. One, the revolution begins here when we look at Google Earth with the war that came before it, which was the French and Indian War of 1754 to 63. When the war was over in 63, Britain immediately knew that it had a huge debt as a result of winning that war, but it owed a lot of money, and it didn't want to do any more fighting. So England would ban all settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains into a nation of farmers. FarmersOnly.com back then. We are farmers. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba. This really frustrated them. Combined, England would also create all these new taxes on the colonists to help get the debt money back. And in Boston, it would boil over. Boston, in particular, will become sort of the birthplace of this revolution. In 1770, here in the heart of downtown Boston today, you will have the Boston Massacre. Here you can see the spot where Crispus Attucks and the other 4 guys would die. By 73, over here, you'll have the Tea Party. Fed up with taxes, they throw British tea in the harbor. Britain shuts down the port. It just gets worse. By 75, the British go out to pursue at night a store of ammunition and supplies that the colonists are getting ready in case they need to fight the British. And so, on the way to Lexington and Concord, the first shots will be fired by someone, and to this day, it is a historical mystery. We do not know who. But this is where the war essentially begins. And so, Lexington and Concord sort of becomes the birthplace where that starts. Now Washington will sneak up to Boston. He'll basically get a cannon up there, a couple cannons, and command the heights. And the British will retreat from Boston, thinking that there is no way they can defend it. And they'll return at the Battle of New York. Washington has a very difficult task here. The British will sail in with the largest fleet of ships ever assembled, and Washington will have to defend a series of islands. Washington has a giant problem, which is that he really has no effective navy. And so Washington, in defending New York City, will lose 3/4 of the nation's army, which was then called the Continental Army. With the 1/4 of troops that remained, Washington would basically escape up Manhattan Island and cross over the Hudson, and then position himself back towards Philadelphia, at that time the nation's capital. And so Washington would try to protect the capital as best he could, and they will settle at a place that is known as Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, which is over here near King of Prussia. As a result, Washington, in the dead of winter, would command this camp where people were essentially starving, people were leaving because they weren't being paid, many of them, and many people were dying in the camp of sickness. Some were cooking their boots, and things were all around bad, but Washington needed a victory. And so on December 25th, 1776, Washington will sneak across what is the Delaware River. And it's been immortalized in a famous painting called Crossing the Delaware, and he will attack at Trenton. And so Washington will score his big victory there. Merry Christmas to the British, essentially on Victory Day, on Christmas Day and the next day. The famous painting we will look at more in more detail, and in that painting he stands up in the boat, which of course never really happened, because standing up in freezing, frigid cold waters would be suicidally stupid. So from that battle, the next famous battle that needs to be known is the Battle of Saratoga, which will take place in upstate New York. And it's there in Saratoga that basically America scores its first big victory of the war. Saratoga becomes the turning point of the war, and the news will get to France, where Ben Franklin is essentially living in the palace of the king at Versailles. And he goes in, he has a special outfit that he'll wear that day. It was a blue velvet outfit, and he puts it on for the occasion, and he walks into the King of France and tells them, hey, how about you guys support us now? And so here is that palace. You can see the giant gardens. The wealthy back then, without televisions, without internet, their form of entertainment quite often to show their wealth was gardening. And you can see that Versailles was no different. It had tremendous gardens. But it is here at the palace that Ben Franklin is able to persuade France to join in the fighting. And without France, America would not have much of a navy. And so now with France on our side, America will basically have a navy, and they will go and basically bottle the British in at a place that we call Yorktown. And so Yorktown will be the last battle of the war. The French Navy will bottle up the British fleet. They will catch Cornwallis, the British general, and they will get him stuck there in Yorktown. And they keep digging these parallels to move the artillery closer. And when they do, at some point the British realize they cannot hold the position, and they have to surrender to the Americans. And it is at Yorktown that America will gain its independence. So thank you. I know that was a very fast tour of the American Revolution, pinpointing certain battles, where it begins, where it ends. Make sure that you are answering the questions, and thank you guys for your time and your dedication this year.